Yeah, I really wish this is something that I had received as advice when I was getting into customer success is just find mentorship early on. Find somebody who is willing to vouch for you, give you really good advice, and ask you the right questions that will make you think about things in terms of your career path. It's hard, right? In CS, we don't really have career paths that are mapped out for us. So often we have to set our own career path. So yeah, get mentorship from somebody who's a veteran in customer success and is also willing to provide that sort of mentorship and advice.
Spotlight, a new customer success soundtrack from the heart of Canada, brought to you by CS in Focus.
Hello, Bhumika. Thank you for joining us today with CSM Focus Spotlight.
Hey, Emma, really happy to be here.
So how about you just introduce yourself and how do you get into CS?
I'm self-employed at the moment. I'm running a company called Ruffday Services, which provides coaching and consulting services for customer success. I'm also part of the CS and Focus community as a community lead. So really happy to just be able to give back to the community for CS. How did I get into CS? That's a great question. So customer success wasn't really customer success when I started out. I really started out with just having a passion for solving problems. I also come from a family of educators, so teaching is in my blood. And I think when I started out in management consulting, the part that I used to look most forward to was just seeing our customers happy and seeing the impact that we would have on them. So problem solving became an addiction at that point. And yeah, and that's really what got me to CS. So my first job in CS was actually an account management executive. And the kind of work that I was doing was very customer success focused, which was onboarding, making sure that customers are using the product, and then also helping with expansions. So I eventually asked my manager, who was the CEO, it was a very small company, and I asked them, hey, can you just change my title to customer success? Because this is what I'm actually doing. And they were like, yeah, it makes sense. And then they changed it. So that's how I got my first customer success role, is by asking my manager to change my title to customer success, because that's what I felt like I was doing. And it's been a journey since then. I've worked in different customer success role in enterprise, mid-markets, SMB, all of the above, as well as both public and private companies. And most recently, before I started my own company, I was also a VP of customer success for a company based out of Vancouver. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I always encourage people to map out their own for customer success.
What is the emerging trend that we see in CS right now?
Yeah, it's such a good space to think about right now. In terms of emerging trends, there's a lot happening in AI, as you probably have heard. And generative AI has been helpful actually to customer success. I see that as a trend for sure. People using AI to better communicate with their customers, seeing what they like, what they can do, how they can take a consultative approach for their customers as well. Something that I also am very excited about is I see a trend shifting towards value, impact, and the human-centric approach. I am seeing that. It's funny because it kind of contradicts AI,
Yes. Yeah.
but at the same time, the human approach is becoming very valuable, especially with the economy not doing so well. People are really looking towards just connecting with people a lot more. I'm really excited to see how communities flourish and how AI actually becomes a part of those communities.
You just talk about the two trends, the AI and the human touch. How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's definitely a trial and error process. I think at the moment we're still figuring things out, but I feel like there are things that you can do with AI, which is it can be more of a helpful technique or a helpful tool rather than using AI completely in the process. For example, digital customer success can rely on AI a lot to build templates, to maybe formulate a thought that might be difficult to do. I also see that with my coaching practice, a lot of the folks that I coach, English is not their first language, but they're working in an English speaking market. So just helping you formulate those thoughts, I feel like AI is really helpful. But at the end of the day, you still want to be able to review that before you put it out into the world. So don't rely on AI completely is my advice there, is use AI as a tool to help you formulate templates and communication to your customers.
That's great. So what do you just say is a non-traditional skill that customer success managers should think of?
Yeah, if I can pick two, Emma, I hope you don't mind, but I really feel like critical thinking and resilience are two that come to mind. They're both soft skills. I think that hard skills can always be learned, but critical thinking, how do you actually go about strategizing? How do you break things down? How do you function when you're faced with a problem? And how do you think through it? And that's actually one of the biggest things that are interviewed for customer success. All of the scenario-based questions that you get, most of the questions that you're being asked in terms of how you would deal with the situation with a customer, things like that, those are to evaluate your critical thinking skills and how you think through a problem. So even if it's something that you haven't done before, you should be able to give your perspective on how you would think through it. And I think when you actually get into a customer success role, that is going to be your job day in and day out, is just figuring out, you're going to be faced with a lot of different things. And as customer success, we're in the middle of sales and product, and we provide that little buffer in between. So we really need to be able to think through problems in a way that is unconventional. And then the other thing I talked about is resilience. Like I said, because there's so many different things going on, and often we're inundated with meetings and tasks that we need to complete, and it's really hard to prioritize what's important and what's not. And it's not always easy to do. Of course, you should be able to prioritize it, but it's not easy to do, and we have to be resilient. So all of the problems that we face in customer success, if we can get through it in one piece and also be able to think through it, I think that there's no greater skill.
You touched point about how many information out there and the prioritization. What would you say the most important metrics customer success manager should look at?
So in reality, the most important metric is actually verified outcomes with your customer, but that's been really difficult to look at, right? Unless you actually have a really good process from the beginning, not just customer success, from the beginning, your product team, your sales team, all of that is really well mapped out. The best thing would be to be able to develop some sort of mutual success plan where you can evaluate the business impact of what you're doing on the customer. So that is, verified outcomes are actually the best metric. But because sometimes we don't have that, we look at adoption, we look at net retention, gross retention as well. NPS is used sometimes. I have a sort of love-hate relationship with NPS, but it is helpful, right? At the end of the day, you can't work with just one metric. You have to look at how your customers are using the product, what the impact is of that product, and at the end of the day, what it results in terms of revenue. So that's how to think about those metrics.
Here's my hot take for you. Do you think customer success should be measured on NRR?
I'm being put on the spot.
That's okay. The reason I ask is there are so many people out there saying churn is not only CS, it's a company-wide problem.
It is very true. I think that NRR is helpful, but I don't think that it should be the sole metric on which customer success is measured. Like I said, I feel like we need to be measuring a combination of things, which is NRR is one of them. But again, it can't just be a customer success metric. I think that more than customer success needs to be measured on NRR. I really feel implementations, onboardings, the product team. I even feel like to a certain extent, the engineering team should have some sort of stake in NRR, because at the end of the day, it's all about what the customer needs. And if we're not delivering, it's a team effort, like you said. But yeah, NRR, adoption, and then if we can do verified outcomes, I feel like that would be amazing to measure customer success teams.
Thank you for sharing. Would you see the difference in the US and Canadian market for customer success?
It's customer success is global at this point, but I feel like with North America, where we're often grouped together, Canada and US, and it is slightly different, right? Customer success was basically coined in the US as a term, and the US adopted, especially the Bay Area, where it was developed, and Gainsight came up with this customer success terminology. It was adopted very early on, and it's been evolved since then. But in Canada, we're still catching up to that and what that means. I also feel like the Canadian market is different because banking is a huge sector in Canada, and there's a lot of red tape that goes around it. So how do you evolve customer success for more traditional industries. I feel like that's something that we're still figuring out because we're not as agile in Canada, or we haven't yet adopted technology in the same way. And those are not the main industries that we have in Canada. It's something that we're still figuring out. But yeah, we're getting there for sure. We're getting there. Customer success is happening, and it's interesting. Customer success is happening in industries outside of tech as well in Canada. So I've seen that happen in retail. And like I said, I was talking about banking. And what's happening is that we're putting in place processes for customer success or client success outside of tech. And I think that's super interesting to see how we can develop that non-SaaS customer success in Canada.
I was also thinking about healthcare is very different. Health tech is very different in Canada and US when it comes to regulation.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that for sure. Healthcare is a huge one in Canada, and it's so different because a lot of healthcare is not privatized in Canada. It's government owned. Like we have OHIP in Ontario, and in the US, a lot of healthcare is privatized, so they operate very differently. So yeah, customer success is very different in healthcare too. So I'm curious to see how that evolves as well.
You mentioned you've been consulting for other companies. What do you think the biggest challenge that across the business?
Yeah, so just given the way the economy is, retention has become a huge conversation. And I think it's tough, right? Budgets are being cut for non-critical products and services. So if you fall into that category of a non-critical service or product, you really have to be very thoughtful about how you're going to work with your customer to make sure that stays on as part of their business. So that's something that I'm seeing definitely. Non-critical products are being cut out, and then budgets are being cut for that, for customer success in general. So yeah, there are some terrible trends, but then I'm also seeing a pickup. I think the fall has picked up with just hiring for customer success. I'm seeing businesses evolve to have sales or as part of customer success. A lot of customer success roles are now evolving to account management type roles, where you will own some sort of upsell or expansion as part of your role. Because if it's purely consultative with the customer and it seems like you're doing more support work, it's not as valued right now just because of the way business critical operations are working. So yeah, so those are some of the changes that I'm seeing in customer success, and it's likely to stay. I am glad that CS is getting a seat at the table with revenue. So I'm curious to see where that goes as well.
Do you have any strategy for upsell?
Strategies for upsell. Again, if you can phrase it in a business critical manner, I think that it's going to be helpful to the customer. It really depends on how important that other product is, or that other service, or that those additional users in terms of expansion, right? So upsell and expansion fall on that, just depending on how you phrase it and how important it is for the customer to retain those products and services with you. But it's not easy for sure.
What's your favorite book?
Yeah, I have so many favorites. I think the better question would be, what's my favorite today? So I'm reading 3 at the moment. One is specifically for coaching, The Coaching Habit. It's one that I've read before. I think it's such an amazing book for any leader to read and anybody who's looking for coaching and mentorship. The other one is 7 Pillars of Customer Success. I feel like that is my go-to book for just strategy and building out a more consultative approach in any company that I'm consulting for. I feel like I refer to that book quite a bit. And then the last one that I just started reading, which was a recommendation, is called Wired to Resist. That's a really good one too, which is just how we function in terms of human psychology and how we function and how we are resistant to change. But obviously, change is an important part of any progress as well. So it's interesting how we're wired to resist change and how we can get around that. Yeah, I think those are the 3. Sorry, I'm giving you so many books, but I'm always reading like 10 books at a time. So I don't have a favorite, but those 3 are really good.
I also read those 3, and the first one, which I love from that book, is always ask what's on your mind and keep going down and keep going down. Right.
Yeah, and I also learned as a coach right now, and I know coaching is not just for coaches like me,
Yeah.
obviously, as part of your daily work. And if you're working in the industry, you will be coaching as part of that process as well. As a coach, I think sometimes I have a tendency to try and provide solutions, and I'm trying to help people. But I realize that sometimes the best thing I can do is just ask, like you said, ask more questions like why, what can I help you with? So just ask like that one question, which will be open-ended, but also not too open-ended that it's vague.
Yeah. That's yep, it's always have to like you have to hold off to provide solution right away. Bhumika, what is your superpower?
I think my superpower, from what people have told me, is emotional intelligence. This is a huge part of customer success, just having empathy for your customers, being able to be intuitive with them. Often we play the role of therapists. But I think specifically for me, just I'm so blessed that I've worked in different countries, different environments. So I can really bring a lot of thought diversity to my emotional intelligence. And I feel like I can connect with anybody in the world. So yeah, I feel like that's my superpower. But please tell me if you feel like it's something else. From knowing me, Emma, you can tell me if it's something else.
You're always very genuine and authentic and always willing to help. That's the energy I feel from you. Yeah, that's very
Sweet.
good.
What do you feel your superpower is? Can I ask you that? Has anyone asked you?
Mm, yeah, I don't know superpower, but somebody said I just throw Emma in the deep end and she will find a way to get back,
Oh my
get
God.
things, figure things out.
Resilience. That's your,
Yeah,
oh my God. I love it. I love it.
I feel like almost if you imagine yourself as a superhero, who would that be? That's another one.
So one thing that I think that I want to be able to do this. I always imagine myself as Jean from X-Men, to be able to read minds. Because like if I can do that, if I can read minds, I can figure out like even something that you can't tell me. It's not like I'm trying to be intrusive in your mind, but sometimes people can't communicate what they're trying to say. And I'm like, if I could just read your mind, I can figure out what you're actually trying to say, and then we can just not have to have all this in-depth conversation, as much as I love my in-depth conversations too. So yeah, mind reading would be a super helpful one. Yeah. How about
Wow. That's a good one. For some reason, the Elastic Girl keep coming to my mind.
Elastic?
Maybe
So cool.
maybe it's because of the One Piece that's happening right now with
Oh my
Netflix
God, I love that. Oh, I watched,
with Luffy.
I binge watched it.
Oh, yeah, I think I resonate with her because I'm also a mom and she's trying to do so many. And even in, I think in part two, when she really shined through and have a whole new Elastic Girl
Yeah.
costume, I don't know, that keep coming back to my mind.
And it makes sense, right? Because your superpower is resilience, and then you can be elastic to do so many things at once.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. Yeah.
But also not to the point you break, right? There's
Yeah.
always that
Spreading yourself too thin.
too
But if
thin.
you're
Yeah.
elastic, then you don't have to spread yourself. You're just you'll just bounce back, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what is the one advice we'll give people who's trying to get into CS?
Yeah, I really wish this is something that some like I had received as advice when I was getting into customer success, is just find mentorship early on. Find somebody who is willing to vouch for you, give you really good advice, and ask you the right questions that will make you think about things in terms of your career path. It's hard, right? In CS, we don't really have career paths that are mapped out for us. So often we have to set our own career path. So yeah, get mentorship from somebody who's a veteran in customer success and is also willing to provide that sort of mentorship and advice.
That's great. Where did you find your first mentor? I'm really curious about that.
My first mentor, so before we had all of these communities for customer success, which are amazing, I really wish that they existed when I was getting to CS. My first mentor was actually at work. I had an amazing manager a little bit later on my career, actually, not towards the beginning. But I've also learned from a lot of different people in my career. And I would say even outside of my career, in my personal life, my mom, my sister are great mentors to me. So yeah, so I think I haven't had just one mentor, but if you're asking me, my first customer success mentor was actually one of my managers who was super goofy and she was amazing. So she really helped me realize that I can show up as my genuine self to work. And I don't have to pretend to be professional all the time. And the things that I had learned early on in my consulting career, which was about showing up in a certain way, always being suited up, I think that really broke my.
If somebody wants to find mentorship, what community would you suggest right now?
Yes, and focus.
Yay! There we go.
Okay. No, I had to throw that in there. But there's so many great communities, Slack communities, there's Facebook groups, there's LinkedIn groups for customer success. So I would say join the one that works best for you. If you're in Toronto, join CS in Focus. We are a Canadian-based community. So yeah, anybody in Canada, honestly, not just Toronto. And then we have Women in Customer Success, which I feel is an amazing community as well. And then there's a lot out there. Just ask around and search for the one that works best for your demographic.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Bhumika.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation, Emma, as always, and I hope that this will be helpful to others who are in CS and looking to get into CS.
What's the best way to contact you?
So you can contact me on LinkedIn. My handle is Arora Bhumika. You can also visit my website, which is coaching.ruffday.ca. And you can contact me from there and feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on Slack in CS and Focus. I'm the community lead there. So yeah, feel free to just drop me a message on Slack too.
Thank you so much, Bhumika.
Thank you, Emma. Take care.
That's it for today's Spotlight. Wherever we go, we always have CS in focus. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to check out our community at csinfocus.com. If any topics you'd like to explore further, let us know.